probably the first time was I was serving Father Solanus in that little side altar at St. Bonaventure's, where the Blessed Mother statue is. And he was around, I think he had passed the consecration, but he was holding up the paten with the Kocian, and he started sliding down, and I thought, oh, and I put my hands up, and he caught himself, And then one of the brothers came by, saw that he needed some help, so he got a chair. I had Father sit down there for a minute till he got his strength back, and then he finished the Mass. Then they took him to the hospital, and he came back the first time after a little stint in the hospital. And anyway, then I was in the chapel making a little visit, and Brother, what's his name, Badalamenti, Gabriel Badalamenti, was his nursemate, And he came in the chapel with Father Solanus. They just had gotten back from the hospital. And I could hear him saying to Father Solanus, now, Father, you know what the doctor said. He doesn't want any exertion. We won't kiss the floor, which was our custom at that time. Entering the chapel and leaving the chapel, we'd get down and kiss the floor in an act of humility, I guess, in the reverence of the Eucharist. And so I could hear Father Solanus say, "Oh, all right." And I was sitting there and I was wondering, I wonder what he's going to do. Well, anyway, they were there for a few minutes, and down he goes to the floor. He kissed the floor, and Father and Brother Gabriel said, "Oh, no, Father, no." But it's too late then, he was down there and kissing the floor. So that was his devotion, was over and above any other thing, which, was very impressive for me. I thought, well, yeah, that's deep within him, And anyway, that was one of the incidents. And then the other incident, I was asked by the novice master to take a prospective friar through on tour, in the building. And then I was outside, showing him the grounds outside. And Father Solanus came out of the kitchen door, came down, and of course came over to us, and I introduced this prospective candidate to Father Solanus, and Father Solanus, very gracious as he always was, but in the conversation, I don't know if he mentioned the Blessed Mother's name or somebody mentioned it, but anyway, his gaze went up above, and he was looking like at the clouds here, and didn't say anything. And we were both standing there like, what's happening here, And I don't know how long it was that he was kind of gazing up like that. But then all of a sudden he slowly, his gaze came down, and then we continued the conversation. And then I thought, well, he must have had some vision or some reflection on our Blessed Mother to do that. And that kind of impressed me, like, wow. But that was the other incident that I thought of. And of course, when he, I can't remember any other situations there, but that always struck me there when I often wondered, well, what was he out of it at the time? When he looked up, or what was happening in his life? And of course, maybe I'll get to ask him later on. But that really struck me that he was so in touch with the spiritual world, but yet he could converse in the normally. In our regular world, So that was, and I was very fortunate to serve as one of the side altar masses that probably, I think it was Mass before he went to the hospital, and I think the second time he went, he died in the hospital. So at least I got to serve his side altar Mass, and then the funeral Mass, I got to serve the funeral Mass, his funeral Mass at Detroit, and that was something special too, the other incident I remember was when he was laid out in the casket. They had him laid out, I think, at the funeral parlor for a day or two or whatever for people to come and make their visit. And then they brought him to the monastery, the chapel, or not the chapel, but the main body there. They had him laid out there. And two of us novices were two at a time, one on each side, one at the foot of the casket and one at the head. And I guess we were to kind of guard the body, so people wouldn't come and snip his beard and what have you. You didn't want a relic, so badly that they'll do almost anything. And I think the only incident that happened when I was on duty there was a lady came with a whole bunch of rosaries, a whole stack of rosaries, and she laid it on his chest, plunked it on there. Well, I thought, that's not going to hurt him, I wasn't going to make a big fuss over that, because after a few minutes, she just took it. And I guess the main idea was touching the body of a saint or whatever, Father Solanus. And that was the only incident that I could recall, that we had to guard against, or, but anyway, that was a good experience to see the devotion that the people, and there were just lines of people coming in to view the body, and of course the funeral was very large too, and so I was very privileged to be able to be there, and even to serve his Mass before he went to the hospital and died in the hospital. And but we didn't have, as novices, we didn't have much contact with the profess. That was in the rules that we were supposed to be separated from the profess as much as possible. But some of the guys were telling me that when we were located at Calvary, and then our novitiate moved to Detroit, and that's when we met Father Solanus there, and the candidates, I guess, went first, and they said that doing dishes, Father Solanus would come in and help them with the dishes, washing dishes or drying dishes, So that was a big thing. But then when the novices came over, then I guess he figured that we had enough to do the dishes, so he never showed up, and I was kind of disappointed in a way. I thought it'd be nice to have to wipe dishes with Father Solanus. But anyway, that we didn't have that contact. But so we didn't have a lot of contact with Father. Otherwise, I think at that time they tried to isolate Father from the people that were coming, and that wanted to see him, and that because he was getting more feeble, and it was more tiresome for him to exert, and more exerting of his energies. So, I don't know how much he visited with people at that time, but. And then at that time too, our brothers and our priests were isolated from, as far as like rec rooms and even seating arrangements at the table. There was the priests, and then the brothers according to seniority. That's what it was. And so we didn't, even like in recreations, the brothers had their own recreation room, the fathers had, and Father Solanus, they say, which was a blessing for us, I guess, because he would, every once in a while, his generosity was that he would like to entertain, and he played the violin, but not real great, the way I understand. He was kind of an amateur at it, but his generosity was such that he wanted to share that with the community, And so he would bring his. They told me he'd bring his violin and play, and everybody'd be there, you know. and that, I thought, you know, that was one blessing of having the priest and the brothers separated, because he didn't come to our rec room to play for us. But, well, he had, you know, first of all, he had the reputation of being a very holy man, you know. And so, you know, he didn't have to say a lot of stuff, or, you know, he didn't have to prove it to me, because this was the common idea, or kind of common experience of the friars that did know him, and that the priests that recreated with him and all that. But just, I would say his attitude, his willingness, you know, to be of help, to be of assistance to anybody that needed it. I think that was one of the big things about Father Solanus. He was a very generous man in that regard, and no job or no whatever person was excluded from his concerns. You know, his love, I'd imagine, and concern. So that seemed to come through quite a bit, and which was a tremendous example to us learners, you know, as beginners. Yeah, he was, you know, that. Otherwise, I don't have any other recollections. This incident when he came out and when he looked up in the sky, and I thought, oh boy, and it was I don't know how long a period it was that he looked up at, probably maybe only a minute. I don't know, but you know, we were looking kind of at each other, like, you know, what's happening here, you know. Yeah, when I saw Father Solanus and, you know, come out of the door, I thought, oh, now this is something that I think this young man will treasure for the rest of his life. You know, the idea of meeting Father Solanus and talking with him, you know, and experiencing him, and I would imagine that that's the influence that it had on him. But I remember the bell ringing for I think it was for Vespers or something, you know, and I guess I just took it on my own to say, well, you know, this maybe I was wrong, but that this was more important in a sense, that this young man would converse in a sense, and would get to talk to or to hear Father Solanus, you know. Maybe I was wrong in that, I don't know.